Um, so go ahead and open up a Kahoot in another page if you can, or on another device if you can. Last session, we talked about using games. And so this is just kind of a refresher. This is a particular game I've used on Kahoot multiple times, specifically with Russian learners learning English. And because it's one of the ones that I've seen some mistakes on, and just a way that I think you might be able to use something like this for your students as well. As I said before, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So this is something that was already created. Always use stuff that's there that's going to work for you. And this is one of the ideas that might work for you. So in order to go to Kahoot, you'll just want to type in Kahoot, and then you'll want to type in the code that I gave you. So you would go to play, and you would type in this code, 86100. And so you'd enter in the game pin right here. So type in Kahoot, type in play, and then enter in this code, 86100. And we'll give everyone a minute for that. So we got Arquique. If you have questions about how to log in, please go ahead and ask. You can ask in the chat if you want to. But the main thing is just open a web browser, type in Kahoot, and then hit play. And you'll be asked for a game pin code. And that's where you type in this pin code, 86100. This particular game is on articles, the use of like the, a, an, or when not to use an article, because it's one that I've seen a lot of misunderstanding with sometimes, and it's one that might be good for your students to practice as well. And games like this, I like stopping during the middle of the game to have like discussions with the students. If I see something that everyone got right, or some people needed a little bit of help on. I know the internet's been a little poor, so we'll see if this particular activity can work. If not, we'll move on to the next one. But we'll give about 2 more minutes to see if we can get more people logged in. So please go ahead and sign into Kahoot and type in this game code, 86100. So I put the code in the chat, and once again, just type in Kahoot. Go to play, and then enter the game code. So the game code is 86100. So I'll enter it myself. And so if you have not entered, please go ahead and try to enter, open in another web page. Thank you, Nurgul. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put the number in the chat one more time, and then we're going to start in about 10 seconds. You'll still be able to enter even after we've started, just typing in that PIN code. But go ahead and keep trying to enter if you're having difficulty now. Open a new page if you need to. There we go. Okay, and I think we have enough for a demonstration at least. Once again, go ahead and keep trying to enter in, even if you're having a difficult time right now. The cheetah is blank fastest land animal. A fastest, the fastest, and fastest, or nothing. Okay, the fastest. The fastest because whenever you have a superlative like est, you have the, because there's only one of them that can be the best or the most of something. And you can have those discussions with your students. It's nice for them to get the instant feedback. What blank nice view? What the nice view? What any nice view? What some nice view? What a nice view? Okay, nice. Okay, what a nice view? What a nice view? I need blank new pair of shoes. Okay, I need a new pair of shoes because if it's I need the new pair of shoes, then it's a very specific new pair of shoes that you're talking about. So if it's a very specific new pair of shoes that you're talking about. Thank you, Aigul. I think it was that said, did it. Please, if you haven't been able to log in, go ahead and put your responses in the chat. Go ahead and answer as quick as you can in the chat, just so you can participate as much as you can, because I know the internet isn't allowing some of you to enter like you might want to. Okay. My father is blank vet. So this is veterinarian, an animal doctor. My father is blank vet. Okay, most of us got it correct. My father is a vet. Why is it a vet instead of the vet? So why is it a vet and not the vet? Any thoughts?
Because it's a description of a person.
It's a description of a person. It's a little more than just that. So if I were to say, I hope I'm pronouncing this, Rajan is the teacher at school 181. Is that correct? If I were to say that Rajan is the teacher at school 181, would that be correct?
No.
No, because that means she's the only teacher, the only one there. Okay, so if I were to say my father is the vet, that means he's the only vet. He's the only animal doctor. And so that's why we add instead of the. I left my glasses on a floor, the floor, and floor, or nothing. Okay, yes, the floor, because it's a specific
Yeah.
floor that you're talking about. You know which floor you left them on. So it's a very specific floor. A floor would mean any floor. You don't know which floor it is. Okay? It could be anywhere. And we'll do one more before we skip on, because I don't think we'll have time to finish the whole set. I come to school on blank bus. This is the one that I've had more people get a little confused about. Take a minute to think about it. I come to school on blank bus.
On the bus.
Okay, why the bus and not a bus?
Because it's an exactly one bus.
It's exactly one bus, right? You're not just going to say, oh, there's a bus. That bus will take me to my school. No, it has to be the same bus each day so they know how to get to your school. So that's why it's specific.
Yes, this bus has its own number.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, we'll do one more and then we'll end it. Okay. Last night we had dinner in blank restaurant. A restaurant, nothing, the restaurant, or an.
In the restaurant, because it's an exactly one restaurant. Because we have all. Oh, okay. It's not right.
No, because we didn't name the restaurant. We didn't say a specific restaurant. If we said last night we had dinner at, let's say an American restaurant, then it could be, a specific one. If there's only one, it could be the American restaurant because there might only be one in the neighborhood. But we didn't specify, and since we didn't specify, it would be a restaurant. Now, if you know exactly which restaurant you're talking about, you could say the restaurant. If there's only, or if you live in a very small town, okay, and there's only one restaurant, that could work. You could say the restaurant. If there's only one restaurant in your town, where I lived for a while in Oregon, in the United States, and there was only one restaurant in that town, so I could say that. But most of the time, we would say a restaurant because we're not, because there are many restaurants that we could be talking about. So most of the time we would say a restaurant. So we, actually, I'm just gonna, okay, we'll do this last one. He works in blank office.
An office, maybe.
Just in office, I guess.
It could be both, but most likely it is just one. It could be both, depending, but most likely it's just one. So it could be he works in the office, but if you're like, let's say that you're at a school, right? And you say, where do you need to go? Oh, you need to go to the office because there's only one office at the school, maybe where the principal is, that's the office. But if you're talking about a person in general, he works in an office. So this one, I would say could be either one, depending on context. But once again, is it specific or is it not? Okay. So let's see who is winning so far. So
I left the Kahoot because of my internet.
Say again.
I left Kahoot because of my internet.
Yes, I know that.
I had a bad connection.
I know that there are a lot of internet issues, so it may not have been the best day to practice that. But
I
since we talked about
here.
games yesterday, I thought it was a good one. That particular one, well, anything involving articles, direct articles and indirect articles is something that I've noticed is a good review just for a lot of people learning English from Russian and Kazakh. I've seen a lot of people have just a couple issues. So it's a good thing to practice and talk with your students. Like that last one, it could be an office or it could be the office. And if your student thinks it's one way versus the other, have them explain the situation where it would be. And because it could be in certain situations, but have them talk about it and have them open up about it. Okay. So today we are going to focus on differentiation. What does that mean, differentiation?
It means you have to prepare you
you have to divide to levels to students.
Okay, you have to divide to levels. It's
or maybe
more than just that.
comparing something.
Go ahead.
Comparing maybe.
Pairing. Okay. So leveling, pairing, grouping. Any other thoughts?
We have also who has a how to say upper intermediate, who has a, we have students pre-intermediate
Levels.
for example, for elements you have to prepare another tasks. For pre-intermediate you have to prepare another task. It means differentiation.
Okay. I'm seeing a common theme that I know when I was first hearing about it as well, I agree with to a lot of extent. More work, right? A lot of us think of that because we're like, okay, we're planning for intermediate, pre-intermediate, advanced. So I'm going to just call it 3 levels, okay? There are many levels, but just for simplicity's sake, like I talked to you guys about before, so beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So beginning are your students that may know some words in the alphabet, may know a couple phrases, but not much. Intermediate, they know just a little bit, a few phrases, you can talk with them a little bit, but not tons of understanding. Advanced, you can carry on a full conversation with. So we'll try, because it does require more work a lot of times with differentiation. And of course, we'd want to have our classes, separated as much as we can by different levels before they get into our class. So if we could have an advanced class, that would be great, and an intermediate, but a lot of times we can't. A lot of times we have it mixed, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So here's some of our goals for today: appropriate techniques, create different tasks, and I hope to show you some resources that might be useful for you as well. So we're going to skip this icebreaker because the internet, it took a while to do it, but I am going to ask this question. How do your students learn? How do students learn in general? How do they learn language, I should say, sorry.
By learning by heart.
Okay, one at a time.
They listen songs.
Akotin first,
They listen songs,
Token first, and then Agarin.
Now, I think actually now students learn the new language through the TikTok, through the YouTube videos. Also, they listen songs.
Okay, so
And
songs,
a lot of
YouTube
types of
videos,
series and movies.
movies. Okay, great. Agarim, I think you had something you were saying.
It's through the speaking and listening.
The question was how to learn the language, yes?
Yes.
Not from what and how. I think that most of students have to learn by learning by heart.
Okay, learning by heart, by memorizing?
Yes.
Okay,
By
okay.
practice.
Any other thoughts?
By practice in general.
Practicing, I think practicing is a huge element. Now, this I'm asking for you, yourself, or for your students. You can answer for either one, just tell me which one. What is the most difficult part of learning English?
So I say memorizing words. If you don't practice anything, you forget everything.
Okay, so if you don't practice, you lose it, kind of like a muscle. If you don't work it out,
repetition is the mother of skills. You have to do it the whole time.
Okay, thank you, Token. Any other thoughts? I like that idea.
So memorizing, practicing, and clarifying everything which they learn.
And to catch the sounds correctly.
Do tasks, see more things that they learn, like yesterday's lecture, kinesthetics ways.
Oh yes, the different ways that they learn.
Because this action is completely memorized in their mind.
Okay, great.
Also for learners, yes, it's I think difficult to catch the sounds correctly from the native speakers.
Identifying the sounds correctly from the native speaker. I can tell you one of the things hard for me with learning Russian is there's so many consonants right next to each other. In English, we have a lot of vowels. In Spanish, they have even more vowels separated. But in Russian, you have words like "Здравствуйте," where you have a lot of consonants next to each other. And so the pronunciation and differentiation between the different sounds is difficult for me. The sound that looks like a W in Cyrillic and then a W with the tail, the sh and sh, I can't tell the difference between those. And it's very difficult for me as a non-native Russian speaker. So I want you to think of what's difficult, not just for you learning English, but for your students, which might be different for you versus what your students are. But it's important to know that, because that's one of the ways you can differentiate for them and help them learn a little bit more. Students in general, they learn best when something is slightly above their level, right? Not when it's right at their level and not when it's below. You want it slightly above their level. Now, what motivates your students to learn English?
Traveling.
Say again.
Traveling.
Traveling. Okay.
Probably they want to study abroad. That's why
Okay, they want to
someone
study
has a
abroad.
plan. Yeah.
Arna, I heard you say something, but I couldn't hear what it was.
They are. They also always want to see more sightings from other countries.
Okay.
So it's something traveling about.
So related to learning more about other countries, travel, culture, that type of thing. Okay.
Yeah. And they also want to go abroad, like by programs like work and travel.
Okay. So for career, money,
Some of the
travel.
students
Yeah.
study for points, for marks.
Okay.
Mm.
So that they can get better marks, so it's cheaper for them. Okay, good. Now, here's a question that I'm actually going to have you guys raise your hands on. How do language levels vary in your class? So I'm going to ask you this. How many of you, most of your students are beginning level? So most of your students are beginning level. Raise your hand. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if most of your students are intermediate level. So if most of your students are intermediate level, raise your hand.
Not intermediate, pre-intermediate.
Okay.
Mine's.
Raise your hand if most of your students are advanced. And once again, I'm just breaking it down into three. For me personally, there are five. There's beginning, pre-intermediate, intermediate, pre-advanced, and advanced. But I'm just breaking it down into three just to simplify for this. And of course, there's even more layers in between. No students are exactly the same and can't be placed into just one level. So raise your hand if most of your students are advanced. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you have a mix of all three levels in your class. So if you have a mix of three, beginning level, intermediate, and advanced, raise your hand. Almost always I have that in my classes, almost always. I have a student that can quote Shakespeare with me, and then I have a student that knows how to say their name and write their name in English, and that's about it. And that's what a lot of us have, but most of the time, we have one group that we focus on, right? Because the majority of the students normally are, as you were saying, pre-intermediate, I think one of you was saying. And so you'd focus on that group, but then have adaptations to others. Some might have equal parts of all the levels, but you want to think about what to do with that. Now, what strategies have you used to help with this multi-level groups in your classrooms?
Mm.
If you ask about me, I gave them different tasks.
Okay.
According to their levels. For example, for beginners, I gave simple sentences, simple tasks, and so on. If they had advanced level, it will be easy for them, and then I gave to them more difficulty tasks.
Okay. Why is it important to do that?
Because they may lose interest in learning
English
language.
Exactly, and that's
because,
for both.
For advanced level, it will be easy, and it's easy. I don't want to do it, maybe. And when they do something, when they can do something, when they think, when they search something, it will be more interesting for them.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have students that aren't engaged in the lesson, it makes it much more difficult. When you have students that aren't engaged in the lesson, it makes it much more difficult for the teacher to to work. Because if you have the higher level students that aren't engaged, then they may be causing behavior problems because they're doing something else. Or if you have the lower level students, they don't know what's going on, so they don't want to feel dumb. And so they may become a class clown or something to it. It can cause more behavior problems if you don't have them all engaged. And so that's one of the reasons to make it important. Now, here is a couple of the aspects that we do with differentiated instruction. You provide students opportunities to work at their own level, and you make the content accessible. Now, this can work at all levels, and it's most important for probably the beginner and intermediate levels, but it works for all levels because even for native English speakers, I believe in making the content accessible, and I'll show you some examples of that later on. And then you scaffold all the information that's important as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so when you're starting differentiating instruction, the first thing you want to do is know where your students are at. How do you find out what level your students are at? All of you have talked to me about your students' levels. How do you know what level they're at? What do you do personally?
By testing.
Yes, by testing.
Okay.
Pre-test,
Now,
zero test, maybe.
Okay, and sometimes we may not have time for an official test at the very beginning. So what can we do before we can get the test? Like before we know the test, we still want to differentiate. What can we do before the test? I saw some mouths moving, but I wasn't sure if someone was talking and may have been muted.
Maybe explaining the test. I don't know,
Okay.
but before the test, we only
Okay.
explain the test. And
I mean,
then
the test is great because you want to do the pre-test, you want to do the placement, and that will definitely help you to know what levels are at more. But before, we might want to do an informal thing. It can be as simple as
By asking questions.
there we go. Exactly. Okay. So I say, let's see, Tolkien, where are you from? And she may say, oh, I'm from Almaty, or I just moved here. Actually, go ahead and answer. Where are you from?
From Shymkent.
From Shymkent. Okay. What do you like about Shymkent?
I like friendly people. They are outgoing.
Okay. Is
than
Shymkent
other
hotter
countries.
or colder than Almaty?
Of course, hotter,
Okay.
as you know.
And so right now, I'm like, you can tell her understanding is definitely up there, right? But what if I say, where are you from? And she goes, only Shymkent, nothing else. And then I say, what do you like about Shymkent? And she just looks at me. I would know that her level may be a little bit lower, right? And then so then I try to rephrase the question, but just as Akirke was saying, just by asking a few questions, we get a general idea. Now, of course, that's not going to be a full analysis, but it gives us a starting point. I'm talking just when you're first starting the class before you actually have a chance to do a placement test. Thank you, Akike and Tolkien. So we already talked about the the language of your students. We'll skip that one for now. So grouping. What grouping strategies do you use? All of you talked about grouping. What grouping strategies do you use personally and why? How do you group your students and why?
For example, in the beginning of the lesson, just like warm up, I will give, for example, sweets, colorful sweets, green, yellow, red, colorful sweets. So person who choose yellow, so he goes or she goes to yellow group. But they don't know. I don't say in the beginning of the lesson. On this way, we'll lead the lesson.
Okay.
Show the colors.
You actually have a group listed here that I don't have, and that would be called a random group. Because it's not necessarily self-selected. The students don't know which group they're going into based on the color that they pick, but it's random, and which could be good. It can be good sometimes, and I think I'll add that there. So once again, as I told you yesterday, steal ideas from other people. So I'm stealing that idea from you, Tolkien, for my grouping strategies. So normally I talk about leveled groups, mixed groups, and self-selected groups, but you added one that I really like, which is randomized. So with leveled groups, what does that mean? What does it mean when you have leveled groups? What do you think?
By level.
Leveled groups. It's to divide by level.
Yes, for example, the first group
Beginning,
on the beginning,
intermediate, advanced.
Okay, so I have an A group that would be beginning, B group would be intermediate, C group would be advanced, however you want to do it. Okay.
Advanced.
Now, what about mixed
Mhm.
groups?
For example, in one
It's
group
all
we have three
students
groups.
in one
One
group.
is beginner, second is intermediate, and advanced. The three of them are in one group.
Okay, so what's an advantage of having a leveled group? What's an advantage of a leveled group?
Self-select group.
Leveled group is like we can give only one task, which is suits in their level. And
Okay.
about mixed group, they can teach each other.
Okay, so you answered my next question there too, Akike. So we have the leveled group where you could give each group just the same assignment, right? But it's slightly different. So the A group, the beginning group would be maybe a simpler assignment. And then the B group, intermediate group would be a more difficult. And then the advanced group, of course, would be more advanced. Now with mixed, you give them all the same assignment, but they would help each other and they would work together with it. So you would have the higher level students in that mixed group help. Now there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Most of you may use one group more than the other, like you may use mixed groups versus leveled groups more than the other, but I would recommend doing a mix of both, switching it up sometimes. Now, what are self-selected groups?
Maybe it's advanced students. You select
True.
advanced students.
I think
and
that
you give-
they choose groups by themselves.
Okay, yes. This is the one personally I use the least. I use it as a reward system if students have done well in the class, like, oh, if everyone does well in this test and it's improved, then the next time we do an activity, you can pick your own groups. The advantage is they normally pick their friends, and so it's people they get along with. The disadvantage is they normally pick their friends, and so it can cause problems with talking and things of that nature. But you know your students. Sometimes self-selected groups may work, and sometimes self-selected groups naturally happen one way or the other. Normally, I've seen self-selected groups work towards leveled groups more because students want to be closer to people that are at a similar level than them, but it really depends. You know your students and how they work with it. Now, you need to decide if you are doing leveled groups, do you want the students to know? Because most students, in my opinion, will probably know what level they're at. They'll know if they're good at speaking English compared to another student. They'll know if they're not as good at writing compared to another student. Now, you're not going to compare them and put them on the spot, but most students are going to figure that out. But if you want to not worry about that and not have them stress about that, instead of saying beginning, middle, or intermediate, beginning, intermediate, or advanced, you can say red, blue, green, or whatever you want to do. Have it listed something else. And switch up the groups frequently. It's just a good idea to do that because you don't want to get them too set in a cohort. You want to get them socializing a little more, practicing, learning from each other, and so on. Okay, when you're doing differentiated instruction, you want a backwards plan. What that means is you have your goal in mind, and then you plan towards the goal. You don't just start doing a lesson, you have to have the plan in mind first. And you want to organize the materials that will match your different levels. And you also want to collaborate one with another, which I've talked about in every one of my sessions. You want to talk to other teachers that are in similar situations like you. This is the strategy I normally use when doing group instruction and when doing differentiated instruction. Normally, I would do a whole group instruction, okay, where I'm talking to the whole class. Then I would break them up into smaller groups, however the groups are, whether it's mixed groups, whether it's leveled groups, and I would have them do workshops, projects, whatever it is, and then I would bring them back together afterwards. And normally I'd have some type of text that they could read that's all on, if I'm doing a reading activity, I should say, that's on the same subject matter. So for example, let's say you're reading something and your students, let's say it's about Masha and the bear, about when they first meet each other. Okay, so the beginning students, they'd have just a few sentences. Masha meets the bear, okay, in the forest. And then the intermediate students, while Masha is walking in the forest, she meets the bear. And then the advanced students, one sunny day, while Masha is walking through the forest, she comes across, you see what I'm saying? So it'd be the same story, the same idea, but it would be different text for each student. Of course, this takes more time to put together. I do have some websites that will help with this. Unfortunately, the one I really wanted to give you that already had these texts separated like that is no longer free. Some of the others I will share with you today are free. I don't know how user-friendly they are yet because I have not used them myself. But there's over 21 website sources that are free that I will share with you today that will help you with some of these level text and activities like this. After you're done teaching, you have to evaluate. How well did it go? Did your beginning students learn a lot? Did your intermediate students learn a lot? Did your intermediate students learn more than your beginning, or did your advanced, check all your students, see how it worked. Was everyone actually learning at their level? Was the vocabulary correct? Is there anything you would do differently? If any of you have seen me had observations, if I've had observations, that's always what I ask. Like, so what did you like about what you did this time? And what would you do differently next time? Notice it's not what did you do bad, because that's there's no saying of that. It's what would you do differently? How would you adapt it based on experience? Okay. And there's always something, as teachers, we're constantly trying to learn and adapt and make it better. Now, a manipulative is like a reality. It's something that you can physically touch. We talked about this yesterday. What manipulatives did I have yesterday? In yesterday's session, what manipulatives did I have for the games? We had the boards, we had the little
Colorful
pieces.
things, I don't know. Yeah, colorful pieces.
Okay, we had the colorful pieces, we had the dice, we also had the fudge, the chocolate. So manipulatives you want, so, just for the people that are a little bit more kinesthetic and, like working with their hands and have a lot of visuals. You want to have, instead of just vocabulary words, maybe have the students have a vocabulary word wall where they have a picture of the word, okay? And then they have a sentence with the word in it and then actually have the word. And, review those, have them in the back of the classroom so they can practice it. You notice here when they're talking about money, they actually have pictures of the money. And instead of just saying teller and then having what a teller is in Russian and customer and having what a customer is in Russian, they have a real life experience, a picture of the experience there, so you can use that. Videos, demonstrations, sentence frames, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, when you are doing text, you want to highlight certain text and teach them what that means. So when you open a book for the first time, students see pictures, right? They see the title. Teach them, what do you think is important about this? Okay, they may not understand anything they're reading, but they can see a few words highlighted and like, I think it's about, about shopping, okay? Because they see the pictures here. I think this is about shopping, okay? And then in this example here, how much does milk cost? So your beginning student, they may not know what any of this sentence means, but they still see milk highlighted. They see pictures here. They're like, ooh, moloko, maybe that's moloko, maybe that's milk. And so they can think that, and then they see a price listed here. So they can probably figure out that we're asking, how much does milk cost? And so you would ask that student and they could answer, as best they can. Now, for a more advanced student, you would have them read the entire sentence, maybe explain their answer, okay? For a lower level student, just have them read the highlighted portions and answer the question directly as best you can. Raise your hand if you have used this style before, learning stations, or heard of it. Okay. So what is a learning station?
Is it like that in Zoom, online lessons?
Say that again.
Is it like that in Zoom, like online lessons, you divide the sections?
I mean, it can be like a breakout session, I guess. Breakout sessions you could have as learning stations. Okay. So an example of learning stations here is the teacher is very mobile. So let's say in number one, obviously it's more of a computer station that they're setting up, and you have them do some research or an activity where they're practicing vocabulary on the computer, if you have a computer station. On two, maybe they're making, like I talked about the word wall, they're drawing a picture with the word, making a sentence with the word, and so on. And then maybe on this other one here, they're actually having interviews with you as a teacher. I mean, there's lots of different things that you can do. You can see the learning stations here in the corner. You know, they're each doing something different. And it's a way that the students are actually moving around from point to point, okay? I wish I could show you this in person because it does work better in person. So for example, when we were in the Orleu yesterday, I would have put up paper on 4 corners of the walls, okay? And I would say, if you were teaching intermediate students, go to the green paper. If you're teaching advanced students, go to the red paper. Or if you're teaching high school students, go to, and I would have you separated by that. And then say, what are some strategies you use to teach them? And then the teachers who are teaching mainly that group, they'd write down some strategies. Then I'd say, okay, I want you to go to the next group and read some of the things they had and see if there's anything you can add to it. And then we'd move around from group to group. Now, with these learning stations, you can have them organized however you want. You can have a reading station where students are reading books that are at their level. And then you can have a writing station where they're writing about the books that they have read. You know, just simple things. It can even be like a comic that they're writing, trying to understand it. Then you can even have a game station where they're playing some type of vocabulary game, practicing. And you have them switch and rotate maybe every 10, 15, 20 minutes. You decide based on your class size, how much time you actually have with the students. Makes a difference as well. I believe most of you have 45 minutes, 50 minutes with your classes. Is that right? Okay. So if you have longer, you can choose different times, but you can decide how you want it, the time to organize it. But you want to have it where they have a little bit more freedom. This is called a student-centered classroom, because the students are actually doing the moving. You'd be going from center to center, talking to different students, making sure it's understood and checking it out as well. So we're going to take just a minute here. I'm not going to do this as a breakout session, I don't think, but I think I'll finish up on this. So what is your next unit about? What is your next unit for anybody?
Families and friends.
Families and friends. Okay, great. So let's all talk about Agarim's unit, families and friends. How could we create learning stations for a classroom activity for that topic, families and friends? So let's say we're going to break it up into four stations. What could we do one for?
Weekend.
Okay. So say that again, weekend?
Weekend.
Okay. Couldn't quite hear that, sorry. Could you repeat?
Weekend. Weekend.
Weekend. Okay, so like weekend news, like talking about it. Okay, or what they do over the weekend.
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of them, you could have them maybe just a conversation club. They talk about what do you do with your families and friends on the weekend? And so that could be one. Another one is maybe they draw a family tree. So, you know, mother, father, brother, however they want, and they make a family tree and talk about that. Another one, you know, what could another one be? So that's two we have. Our Kirke's idea of talking about the weekend, what they do with their family friends. I love that conversation club. Second one, you could make a family tree. Now we got two more that we can do. Any thoughts?
Maybe holidays, family holidays. Or
Okay, family
parties.
holidays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a birthday party, or maybe something, some celebrations of their family.
Okay, so celebrations, talking about, or maybe depending on your age group, like if you're working with younger grades, maybe they could draw pictures of celebrations that they've done. If you're working with the higher grades, maybe write a story about a celebration that they've done. I like that. Okay, and one more.
Maybe about funny stories, family stories.
Okay, so maybe like a reading activity. So they could gather stories from other, like maybe books that talk about family and friends or family and friend relationships and connections. And you could just have a reading. So the students there would be reading. So number one, we'd be doing what Arkike was saying with having a conversation club about what they do on the weekend with their family and friends. Number two, you'd be making like a, like a family tree. You know, they can organize it. And that would be great for teaching them vocabulary about, you know, family words, grandfather, mother, you know, those type of things. And then for the others, you could have, you know, a reading activity that you would work with for them. And what was the other one? There's one that I'm missing. So we have the reading activity, the weekend news conversation club, and then we have the family tree. There was one other that we said, but I do not remember what it is right now.
Speaking, listening. Well, they can prepare maybe
writing.
dialect.
Writing. So they can
right.
write about a festivity, a festival that they did with either their families or their friends. So just write it. And once again, for the lower level students, you would have them maybe just draw a little picture about what they did and then a couple words. For the intermediate students, there would be more words. And for the advanced students, you'd have like a full paragraph, okay? You would judge the students on how they're doing, and you would, you know the level of your students. But this is one of the great activities, doing not breakout sessions, doing learning stations. This is one of the great ways that you can do differentiating instruction, because each student is working at their own level, and you know your students, so you can help them with it. Now, this does take a little bit more prep time at the beginning, but after you've gotten it set up and do it, it actually gives the teacher more time because the students are working independently. The first few times, it's going to take a lot more work setting up, but after you've done it a few times, students actually ask for it, and they, you know, are getting more into it. Anyhow, I hope this has been useful for you. I'm actually going to end it here because I know we had difficulties with the internet before, and I want to give you guys your Friday. Do you have any questions for me? Or any ideas that you would like to share with your other with the other teachers in the group? Don't be shy. Okay, so I'll ask one parting question then. What do you think is the most important thing about differentiating instruction for you? Like, what do you think is the most important thing that you've thought about through this session about differentiated instruction? The most important aspect. This is not a right or wrong answer. This is just your opinion and why.
By using this differentiation, we can avoid ignoring the students who has low level. Sometimes,
okay, so
sometimes
we can avoid the not helping the students who have the lower level. Okay. Any other
Everyone
thoughts on that?
Involved tasks.
Everyone's involved. Everyone's engaged. It also
Yeah.
helps build a classroom environment where students feel more helpful and trying to help each other. It really helps because they're all feeling like they're getting helped.
Yeah,
they feel more comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great. Anyhow, thank you guys so much. It's been nice working with you these few days, and I wish you the best as you get back into your teaching next week.
Thank you too. It was really useful.
Thank you
Thank you too.
for useful information that you spent time to us. 3 days. Could you ask anything?
Mhm.
You asked me to remind me. You haven't sent your presentation yesterday. Could you send me, please?
Yes, I will. I will send that to. Actually, give me a second right now. I might be able to send it via Zoom. If I can do that, I will do that for you now. So just give me 1 second. Let's see if it will let me do that.
And this one, if it's possible.
Okay.
Thanks.